Hello everyone, my name is Dariel, this is the Church of Reason, and we are going to be continuing on our journey through the Nostradamus quatrains. Now we're going to be talking about some of the ones that didn't make it into the first video, and we're also going to be talking about one that came up while I was making the video. So let's start with that one, right? Now the first one is the alleged prediction of a 2023 quatrain, okay? And this was posted and it was talking about some of the unsettling possibilities for 2023, okay? Now let's just read it and we'll see what we come up with, okay? Now it says here,
From the celestial fire on the royal edifice, when the light of Mars will go out, 7 months great war, people dead through evil, ruin, Everu, the king will not fail.
according to a lot of things that people are saying about this quatrain, is that it has something to do with our time and something to do with some sort of a great war that's going to be happening this year. Now, do we think that that's accurate? Well, I started looking at the quatrain and found some discrepancies and some things to think about, okay? Now, first off, how do we know that this is about 2023, okay? There's nothing to indicate that it is, okay? Now, one of the key things is to take a look at the cities mentioned, and Rhone and Evreux are two cities in the northern section of France. They're up in Normandy. Rouen is a kind of a capital city there. So, what does that have to do with modern times? Is it according to things that I've seen on this quatrain, they say Great War. Are we expecting to see Great War in Rouen and Evreux? I don't think so. Okay, these are cities in France. In 7 months, Great War, is that something that's likely to happen in modern times? A war that's going to last 7 months? Okay, most wars last pretty long time, so that's not exactly making sense. Okay, so what could it mean, right? Well, I started looking at the cities, like I said, start looking into the city's history, and we'll find some interesting things. Now, the first thing that I found is that the city Rouen was invaded in 1591 by the French king. Okay, what happened is, if we look back to that year, okay, Rouen and Evreux were Catholic strongholds during the French Wars of Religion, and it was the king Henry IV. He was a Protestant. He was the first Protestant king of France. He tried to stamp out the Catholic strongholds by attacking these cities. So if we read it again, it says, From the celestial fire on the royal edifice. What is this talking about? Well, the royal edifice is the foundation of the kingdom. Okay, that's the okay. Celestial fire on the royal edifice is referring to a turmoil, a complete change in the kingdom, okay, which is represented by the king Henry IV, who was a Protestant, and he was the first one. So there's a complete change in their nation when this happened. People kind of were freaking out because we have a new king that's a different religion, okay? Now it says, when the light of Mars will go out. Now this could mean two separate things, and it may in fact mean both, okay? One is the fact that Mars, the planet, orbits the sun, okay? So that means that as we orbit the sun, it orbits the sun. Now it doesn't always line up with the Earth, okay? Sometimes the physical light of Mars will go to the other side of the planet. This could mark the time frame at which point this event was taking place. This could also be referring to a time period in France's history where the army was divided. And this is exactly what we see at the end of the French Wars of Religion, where Henry IV, being Protestant, most of the country turned against him. And so there was a divide in the military and there was a divide in the people. And the war caused other countries to get involved and try to suppress the king and force him out, because most of Europe was Catholic. Him being a Protestant king was like an affront to everything they stood for. So there was more countries willing to get involved. Okay, and this all comes to a head in Rouen when they siege the city for 5 months, and it says here, 7 months, great war, people dead through evil. Now, it's important to realize that if we look at this war, it does span over several years. But at this point in history, wars were not fought in the way that they are now, where it's just instantly battles and people are launching missiles and bombs and things. A lot of times the war was declared and it was people sending insults at each other. The armies wouldn't just march right into battle. They would try to strategically maneuver themselves into a position of strength. So there was a lot of like bluffs and people taking over cities without any kind of a fight, and trying to get the other person to surrender without a battle taking place. So when the battles did take place, they were over short periods of time, like 7 months. And the siege of Rouen lasted 5 months. At that point in time, the months that followed were pretty chaotic, where the army had to run. Okay, so in the siege of Rouen, the French king Henry IV was trying to attack the city, and he was basically had it surrounded, and he was trying to get them to surrender. And it was at that point that after 5 months of being sieged, the Spanish king came in and other armies came into the land and they pushed the king out of there, and that's when the real battles started taking place. So when it says 7 months great war, that is pretty much what happened. Okay, now it says here the king will not fail. Okay, and the king did fail in this war. Okay, so what is this talking about, right? Well, again, if we look at the perspective of Nostradamus, and he's a Catholic, remember, and the king surrenders, he backs away. Well, the king actually later on converts to Catholicism, and so the celestial fire on the royal edifice is essentially quenched. It was a long time of peace after the king converted to Catholicism. So this is pretty strong evidence for this being something from the year of 1591 and onward, not a prediction of 2023. And what we should talk about here is the fact that it would be very easy for the skeptics of Nostradamus to look at this and say, well, if you look here, someone got an interpretation that led them to think it was 2023, someone else got a different interpretation, and therefore anybody can just make these what they want them to be, right? Well, the thing is that if you look at the 2023 analysis of this prediction, they're really only focused on the 7 months great war and people dead through evil. They're reading one line of the quatrain and they're skipping out on the rest of it because it doesn't really match. It's easy to say, oh, there were two predictions, but really one of these predictions is partially analyzed. It's only using what they think is going to happen, and they're skipping on the cities and the king and all of these other things that the quatrain says. And I just want to point out that when these quatrains come true, okay, they come true fully, okay, and it's not just, you know, oh, a line here, a line there, and you can make it what you want it. That, I mean, in that regard, the skeptics are right, because you can just read a line and put it wherever you want to put it in history, okay? But if you're gonna be serious about this, you really need to pay attention to the whole quatrain, and you need to, analyze it fully, because pretty much every word of these things plays a major role in the interpretation. So let's move on to another one. I'll give you more examples of this.